And I believe we're live. Hi, welcome to Carnivore Sunday School. I am John Laspina, your carnivore teacher. I'm on the road today. We're on our way to Key West. So if my sound goes in and out or if I'm a little bumpy, you know why. But we're going to do our best. And we have a very special guest today, Duncan Smart. And we have our regular host, George Goodenough. Steph is not with us today, but she's with us in spirit. We really, really like her. So we miss her very much. So I'm going to do, we'll do a brief introduction by going around and introduce ourselves, and then I'll tell you all about Duncan, and then we'll hand it over to him so he can tell us more about himself. So I'm called Carnivore Teacher. I'm on YouTube. I'm on all the other social media sites as Carnivore Teacher Alpha. And I became carnivore about 3 years ago. 3 years before that, I was ketovore. The year before that, I was keto. Solved a lot of problems, lost weight. Same story that everybody hears me go on and on about. This is a real short intro, so I won't go into detail. But I'm using my time as a retired middle school teacher to pay it forward and to let people know who are looking for it about the carnivore diet and all the wonderful things that our body can do if we give it the space and the bandwidth to heal itself. And that's what I'm all about. So, George, let's go over to you. Tell us who you are and where you're from. By the way, I'm in Florida. George is in the UK. He's about my age. He'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right, John. I am in Bridgewater in Somerset in the southwest of England in the UK. And you were born on July the 17th, I think, and I was born on 16th, September the 2nd. Yep. So, yeah. Oh, 16th. Yeah, of course. Yeah, my father was 17th. I knew it was around that era. Yeah, I was September the 2nd, so there's 6 weeks or thereabouts between us. So we could be twins. But I've got a lot of twins over in the States, it turns out. Yeah, so I am 6 years old, same as John. I am a carnivore now. I was a very fat type 2 diabetic, and on March 1st, 2022, I was diagnosed as such. Was told by a very kind nurse that all carbs are sugar, hadn't heard about carnivore. Went away, did the research, started eliminating the carbs. Very rapidly managed to get rid of most of them, and then eventually went full carnivore to all intents and purposes in September of 2023. And here I am in December of 2025. When I went carnivore, I started building my presence in the community, and that has changed my life to a dramatic extent. I've healed myself. I lost 120 pounds and reversed type 2 diabetes, but I've made a massive community around the world now. I've been fairly active within it, and as such, I am now a friend of Dr. Kilt's and a moderator on his channel. And also I'm the UK ambassador to Healing Humanity. So I'm not actually a professional carnivore as such, but I am a full-time carnivore. So it's and I have to try and earn a living alongside it as well, which is a logistical of interest, more of which later. But yeah, that's basically my backstory. And here I am, very proud to have known John for quite some time now. Duncan is a very new friend of mine. We actually met at a meetup fairly recently. And yeah, we've become good friends in a short time. So it's great to have him on board with us tonight. So back to you, John, to give a little bit of an intro to Duncan.
All right. Well, welcome to Carnivore Sunday School. Today, we are honored to have a very special guest, Duncan Smart. Duncan is an international endurance athlete, retired math teacher. I believe I'm right. You tell me.
That's correct. No, that's correct.
One of the most powerful voices in the animal-based world. He is the author of Blood and Bone, The Vampire's Guide to Carnivore Living, and Carnivore, the Manual. 2 groundbreaking books that cut through nutritional confusion and expose the lies we've been told about food, health, and human biology. In his work, Duncan blends hard metabolic science and ancestral wisdom and vivid storytelling, helping people understand why removing what harms and fueling what heals can transform their lives. He's a deep thinker, a straight shooter, and someone who has helped countless people reclaim their health and identity through the carnivore way of eating. So welcome, Duncan Smart.
Well, thank you very much. And what a beautiful introduction there. I hardly recognize the man you're describing there. But no, that was beautifully said, John, and thank you. And I really appreciate the invite. It's I've recently been invited on quite a few podcasts, and as George said, I got the opportunity to meet him a couple of weeks ago. And George has opened up a whole new world to me. Although we have so many things in common through the way we eat, but I will tell you this evening about it. The reasons that I think I differ a little bit is because I came into the carnivore world through self-discovery. I didn't even realize there was so much support around the world or through the groups that George has introduced me to. I really thought I was out there initially on my own, and slowly started to discover more and more people eating this way. But as I say, what I'll tell you about my story and how I came about it. But it was through self-discovery to fuel my endurance running rather than to heal myself of anything. However, the side effects, and I'm going to use that loosely, side effects, is I actually improved so many other things about my life. Not just the endurance running, but so much, right down to grey hairs, to tooth health, to every little skin condition. All these little things became noticeable over the time. So do you want me to go straight into how I came about this way of eating and the story, the background? Are you happy for me to tell that now?
Yeah, let's go right into it. Tell us about all those little things too, because we've all experienced different improvements and benefits on the carnivore way of eating. Everybody's story is unique and amazing. If you ever listen to the Dave Mack stories and all of the people who tell stories. So let's hear yours. What's the first thing that you noticed when you went carnivore? The very first thing. Was it weight? What was it?
First thing I noticed going carnivore was, gosh, did it all come together? It was probably that freedom that it gave me going carnivore. As strange as it sounds, it seemed to be so much easier to, because I was trying to find this way to fuel my runs and training. I wasn't limited to eating 2 hours before or immediately after I finished training. So it opened up all that freedom. But everything else came about quite quickly. And it was only really now talking to other people that I can reflect back and think, actually, I now notice that change. I now notice this. But what I'll start to tell you how I came about this way of eating was, and I've been telling this story quite a bit recently, and I was just going through it while I was driving back tonight, and I thought, actually, I've been saying 7 years carnivore. It's getting on 8 years carnivore now, with 2 years keto prior to that. And how I came about this way of fueling was I started to dabble with running, and I was a typical middle-aged man in his 40s who was a little overweight, probably quite a bit overweight, single parent, 3 children, and you get those usual stories. Oh, let's have a race, Dad. And so, once you get to my age, son, we don't run, we don't do that. And you start to think, why not? And there was other reasons I got into the running scene. As you start to get better at running and you start to join clubs and people start to say, oh, how about doing a marathon? You're not a proper runner until you do a marathon. So I started to try to train for longer distances. I was nowhere of that level. And I thought, how do you fuel this? How do I come back from a day in school, feed my children, and then do I eat then? Because I can't train for 2 hours because I'd have a heavy stomach. How do I go about doing that? I'd ask my colleagues. And the answer has always been from everybody is gels, energy gels. And you take them for every 20 minutes. So great, that sounds easy. Let's get some of these high fructose syrup type glucose horrible gels. And then they have caffeine ones, they have all types. And they're trying to manufacture them with higher carb. It sounds strange with a higher carbohydrate content, but it's to get as much carbohydrate in as they can. And I've tried a few of these, and then you get this slight intestinal issues and the discomfort and the bloating and everybody I spoke to said, oh, that's just part of the training. That's part of it. You've got to take enough under your belt for the endurance run that you're doing this every 20 minutes. Now, I like to think of myself as an educated, intelligent person. Some may differ on that, but what I am is, as a mathematician, I am sort of very black or white, or I also read a lot. I've read an awful lot over the years, and I like research. And if I get some research given to me on the internet or something, I like to go to the root where it's come from, actually chase it, see where it's come from. And I've long time thought, and this question was in my mind, how did our ancestors fuel themselves? They didn't have gels. And I certainly know of plenty of records of them, of hunting the animal to exhaustion. Mankind can outrun any animal over endurance. They may have to relay it, but they will run them to exhaustion, a four-legged animal, and kill it. Now, drag that animal back, feed the tribe. You've got quite a nice picture there. They may be on a fasted state then when they've eaten everything and have to go out and run again. And their motivation to run and kill that animal is to feed their loved ones. They'll feed the family to exist. So no signs of energy gels. And that's when it took me down this route into keto, thinking, if I keep my carbohydrate level below 50 grams, am I going to get a different fuel source? Am I going to tap into fat burning? Which, of course, we all three of us sitting here now know that happens. Keeping it under 50 grams, I am in that area that's fueling beautifully. And it certainly helped. I realized then I didn't need to eat prior to coming home and going out. And after about 2 years of this, my success went up in the athletic world, started to improve because I was losing weight. I could train better. So there's loads of things going on there, not just the one. But after a couple of years, keeping it under 50 grams, you start to think, do I really need these carbohydrates? And I've said this to George when I met up with him. I said, I wish I'd journaled my journey. I kept a journal of it and documented it and evidenced it. And it's now a little bit difficult to know the exact dates. But over those 2 years of keto style eating, the amount of carbohydrates I was consuming slowly started to drop off. Of course, not having as many carbohydrates in, my muscles stored less water. So they were leaner, felt denser. I could train more. My recovery got better, so I could train more on there. So you could imagine this exponential growth of athletic performance. As I started to, this switch kept saying, why don't you go zero carb and see what happens? Actually take it out. And probably one of the factors was there because I was starting to cramp a little bit. Because if I was having maybe my limit of 20 grams, my muscles were probably wanting to take on the water then as well, to how many grams of water, I don't know the actual facts for grams of carbohydrates. So then I believe, and I might be wrong on this, or I wasn't quite getting the potassium and the magnesiums and the electrolytes right. Maybe I wasn't eating the correct way on the carnivore side or the meat side. So my muscles started to spasm a bit, and I noticed it was always after carbohydrates. So say I'd done a race, and at the end of the race, you get the usual energy, not energy gels as such, but it's more the bars. They give you these bars, and in the cycling world, in the UK, it's really big for them to have their cream cakes and all the things that they give. And because your body's crying for something after 2 hours, especially me on a fasted state, I was reaching out for these bars, having one of those, and then getting severe cramp. I noticed if I didn't have any carbohydrates, this cramp never came on. And that's when I went into the full carnivore, full blown. And I didn't know anybody. And you would think, why not reach out onto social media, look at the groups and see if there were other groups out there. That would have helped me massively. But I was also keeping it really low key for reasons of my own. Well, with my family, I suppose it was I didn't want to worry my children as a single parent. And then also my race colleagues, when they started to realize what I was doing, and one of my really good friends took me aside and said, do you realize the problems you'll cause yourself eating saturated fats and the cholesterol issues? Like as we know, people are concerned about it. And I said, I think I'm aware that you're what you believe, but I've got my own self-belief that I don't think this is going to be an issue. And he said, but once you go down this route, and if you spend a couple of years, you're going to do damage to yourself that you will not be able to go back. And as well, I'm so convinced in my research that I don't think this is going to happen. When I think back now, if I'd known guys like you or known others, it would have supported my self-belief even more. I would have had somebody else to reach out. But I'm that type of person that you could say is headstrong. And sometimes in life, it's not a bad way to be. And I've found that it was the right decision for me. Absolutely the right decision. And things just got better and better. I got down to 1 meal a day because there was no need to. As long as that one meal had enough fat and I got the balance right and started to eat almost nose to tail, plenty of organ meat, and just getting a beautiful balance, I would find that I had massive amounts of energy. Started to make my own bone broth, and that would some of this would hydrate my runs. But anything under 2 hours of racing, I didn't even need water with me. So there's a few things going on here. If I'm not needing to fuel, I don't even need to take water. There's no delay I can actually go quicker in a way because there's no delay to try to fuel or to go and get the water stations. I can actually keep going longer. So I've just realized I've been talking for a long time, guys. Is there any questions at this position?
No, that's fine, George.
No, but I'll just do a few shout outs actually, because we've got some great people in the chat. I can see John Smoothie is here, Carl from the Primal Lifestyle, which is nice. We have the usual suspects, Juliet, Amy, and the other Amy as well. So yeah, we've got plenty of people. Just going to tap back up if I can see if anybody I've missed.
I'm clicking them so I can show people on the screen real quick who's saying hi.
Absolutely, yeah. Amy's here. So that's pretty much it. Quick in joke about Amy from Keto Rockstars. Don't worry, we're not going to ban you from the channel tonight because that was a rather unfortunate incident last night, which hopefully you've forgiven Coach Juliet for. Yes, it was very embarrassing when we were trying to eliminate a troll and we ended up eliminating one of the stars of our space, but she soon recovered. So that was good. So I think that's. I haven't actually got any questions at the moment. Other than maybe if we can just touch on your book for a second, because there's been sort of 2 editions of it, and I have the one which you very kindly gave me, which is the Carnivore Manual. But I think we need to explain. I think we need to explain to people not to go and buy both books because they are essentially the same book. So can you just explain the history of the book and why you?
Of course I will, and that's all part of my journey really. So then, as I started to do better in the sporting world, people start to notice, and especially the colleagues that I'm starting to beat, and they're asking, what's my secret? And I said, well, I'll tell you my secret, but you won't want to know. And they wrongly presumed that, especially in the Great Britain age grouping, and there's so many performance-enhancing drugs going on, they're more advanced in the drug world than they are on the actually detecting these. And that's, I think, what they presumed. I said, well, no, mine is actually just down to this way of fueling. Initially, maybe my speed wasn't there. I use an analogy of a diesel engine, that maybe that going into the carnivore way of eating was a long-term fueling method, and the speed wasn't there, or maybe just that different energy system that I was going from. Perhaps the carbohydrates were the rocket fuel, but only lasting for 20 minutes if they're taking the gels every 20 minutes. But my speed started to slowly come back, and it came back even quicker. And maybe was it perhaps because I could train more, because my recovery was so much better after a marathon, I could run again next day. They just felt great. What happened then when I started to tell people the way I ate, and they said, well, I want to do that. How can I start doing that? I said, easy. You cut out wheat. Oh, I can't do that. I said, I did warn you. Is there any other thing else? Yes, maybe just stop eating sugar. Oh, I think I could do that. But no, you can't if it's in your gels. And once I started to tell them where in the processed foods, it's, oh, I can't do that. I said, well, then you can't do what I do but it's your own issue. As I started to tell more and more people this story, they all saying, you should write a book. And I said, perhaps I should write a book. But I was busy teaching full time, and there was other reasons as well, but it just takes time, doesn't it, once you sit down to do that. Then something like a switch about a year ago. I suppose I was meeting Anna, actually, my partner, who's she's from Poland, is Anna, and she's a yoga teacher, and she's the most beautiful woman. And she's been a vegetarian for 33 years. She was vegan for several years. She followed the Hare Krishna movement, and so very spiritual. And when I met her, can you imagine that conversation? Now, she was saying, oh, do you mind if we just, because we're going for this beautiful walk, I have something to eat. And she had a little packed lunch of raw vegetables and things. And then a couple of hours later, she says, you haven't eaten anything. I said, I'll eat tonight. It's okay. Now, that makes people think, well, why is he okay? I said, I ate yesterday. I'll be fine. Then that conversation came out. While I was in school, and I was in one of my tutor groups in the morning, I said to them, I've got a question for you guys. I said, I met a beautiful woman, but she's a vegetarian, and they knew I was a carnivore. And I said, so what do I do? And all the boys said, oh, just lie to her, sir. Yeah, just lie. She won't know. The girl said, no, you've got to tell the truth. So this became a question about it. But I told Anna how I ate. And her face was a little bit, well, you just eat animals, when she's eating vegetarianism for ethical reasons or whatever reasons she had at the time. And I'll tell you, maybe I'll touch on a couple of those. Within only knowing her a month or so, she started to eat meat, and now she's a full-blown carnivore. Absolutely a night and day switch. And so she's the one who said, why don't people know about this? I feel so good, and there's so many, she could highlight so many ways that she felt better, especially after so many years on that vegetarian way of eating. And so this is when she was the one who said, this needs to be put out there to the world. I said, well, I try to tell people, but people do not want to listen. They refuse to listen. I think it's because they're bought into this narrative all their lives that they've been sold by whatever, if it's the government or the adverts or the big pharmaceutical or the big pharma, all about taking the money from them. Because then they've believed that for so long, and I don't blame anybody for their doing that for their own choice, because we all follow that narrative. But then you don't want to change your mind. It's very hard to, because you're not going to turn around and say, I've spent 50 years eating the wrong foods, and now this is what I've done to myself. And then looking at them possibly that their health problems are from what they've been eating. No, it's very difficult for people to accept that. So Anna said about, well, maybe if they don't willing to listen, put it into a book. And I said, I know, I keep thinking about doing this book. And I was always toying with retiring the next year from teaching. So I thought, well, if I coincide the delivery of my book for when I retire, then I can say what I want in the book. I can speak out about the so-called healthy plate or the food pyramid and tip it upside down. I can actually talk about what the school educates, because nobody's going to be able to say anything if I've retired. And I'll put it all in this book. I even talked about neurodiversity and how the food we could, especially the carnivore way of eating, can help that. So this is how the book idea came about. Then as I've been writing, and most of it is research, and you guys will have looked at it and will see there's an awful lot of science in there, and all the science is evidenced. And then after I deliver the little bit of the science, I then do typical teaching style. I then go into a little bit of a parable, maybe a bit of fiction to a narrative to wrap up that bit of science in a real, or in a scenario. It's the style of books over the years I've always enjoyed reading. And I thought that if it's put into small little snippets like that way, it might be easier for the reader to take it on board. Then this idea came. I was so frustrated that somebody had refused to accept or even looked at me. I was as though I was making it up about that I just ate meat alone. And I said to Anna, I said, I might as well be a fictional character. And that's when the idea came. I thought, if I narrate the book through a fictional character, so it's not my voice, it's this fictional character, are they more likely to believe it? And then as the chapters evolve, it becomes evident that the fictional character is myself. So the fictional, in this case, was the vampire. The vampire, it sounds crazy, but it's not as crazy because I could then explain about the Mongolian Empire and all these historical empires that ate as carnivores, and they were seen as mythical creatures because they were difficult to kill. They didn't need to eat for a day or two. If they would drink blood from the horses, you can see where this idea came from. And that's where my idea, and then I could actually speak out against the drugs, the Ozempic and all these drugs that the doctors are taking money. I could follow the money and actually speak out, not too worried about the possible being sued for this, because it's the vampire story and not mine. This is my initial idea. So when I released that, I was so happy with I called it a manifesto. So back to what you were asking there, John and George, you were saying, well, please don't get them confused. So I wrote this huge manifesto. It's a huge book. It's written the style of a Bible with the parables. And I was so pleased when it was delivered because it was what I wanted. Then on a few podcasts, somebody once asked me, well, I got a few messages to start with saying, is it fictional? And then somebody said that on a podcast. And I went, no, there's fiction in it, but it's wrapped around real science. And then I thought, if I'm trying to get this message about how beautiful this lifestyle is, this carnivore way of life out to the world, like you guys are working so hard to get this message out to help people, and my message is actually falling flat if they again think it's fictional, if they think it's not real. And I believe it was on one of the podcasts, and it might have been one of my American friends who said, perhaps this maybe the title is Blood and Bone, The Vampire's Guide to the Carnivore Living. So I said, perhaps. So I'll repackage a smaller one, call it the compact edition, and change the title to Carnivore the Manual. So yes, guys, they are the same book. Just one is a smaller version of it. It's still, I was going to change a vampire in the second re-edition, but then quite a few people said, keep the vampire narrative in there because it explains itself quite clearly. So I just changed the foreword at the front of the book and explain this story. But that's how that came about. And it is incredible when you start to look at the idea of this vampire. It might have been agriculturalists that came up with this narrative about the old meat eaters and the hunter-gatherers to demonize them. There's plenty of possibilities because we know how healthy we are this way. We know how quickly we heal eating carnivore. Cuts can heal quickly. My grey hairs from my 40s have now changed and I've got dark hair again. So I'm 57 years of age now. My skin hasn't been as good as this since I was in my 20s. I frequently get blood work taken privately and my kidney and liver functions are that of a 20-year-old and I am 57 years of age. When I was 40, and I've forwarded some before and after photographs, when I was in my 40s, I was an old man with that extra weight around and you just presume that, that's what it is when you're a middle-aged man. Your hair starts to recede. And anyway, it's all documented in my book. I think that answers your question. I'm starting to get into my soapbox, aren't I? And I start to get almost frustrated myself.
Doing what we all do. You start getting excited explaining all of the improvements and all of the benefits, and you can't shut up about it because why isn't everybody doing this? I mean, and then you see people in your life who are starting to get overweight and they're walking around in a haze and a fog and they're unhealthy and they don't look, and you have the answer. And it really is that simple, is to just feed our bodies what it needs and what it wants and take out the stuff that's harming it and slowing it down. And it is so simple, but it's not simple when you're in the fog, when you don't see it.
The fog. Sorry, George, were you going to say something there?
No, go ahead.
Fog gets you're on there when you say the fog, because it is fog. The brains are fuddled with that fog. I mean, once you start to burn ketones and you're operating on ketones, it is the most beautiful feeling. That fatigue goes away. And that's when you asked me early on and you said, what was one of the first things I noticed? What I noticed, and you'll know this from the teaching world, is it is such a tiring job. I mean, I'm not saying there's plenty of work. And because there is not a moment that you cannot multitask all the time. And then the head teacher might say, Mr. Smart, we need to have a meeting after school. And I think, oh, good grief, I've just been working. I've got to get the books marked. So you go sit in that meeting and everybody's yawning because they've sat down for the first time all day. And the head's kind of, and I had that for years. When I started eating this way, within weeks, I was sitting in that meeting after, and I never yawned. I'm looking at everybody else thinking, they're all yawning. I'm not yawning. And I noticed I do not yawn anymore. I know yawning is a natural thing. It doesn't happen to me. And that levels of ketones, I felt so calm. I felt beautifully calm. And the head teacher will be saying something purposely to wind me up and press the buttons because I came the deputy head, and so there was a lot of these conversations going on. She was, oh, don't tell the other staff. And I'm saying, why don't we tell the other staff? You know, asking the questions that somebody would normally be too scared of.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt so calm and so beautiful with this way of being that it, as you said, I came out of the fog, and I've tried to describe that in my book as well, about taking the red pill or the blue pill, talking about the analogy to the Matrix film. Once you take that pill and you start operating on ketones, you don't want to go back. This is a place you can be indefinitely. It's such clarity of thought. And in the sporting world, that also helps, because you've got to make decisions, split-second decisions, especially cycling at speed, and can get up to over 50 miles an hour on a bicycle. And you've got to decide which line you're going to take. Well, I'm convinced my ketones help me almost slow time down. As strange as this sounds, but if you do think about slowing that time down, when they talk about great athletes and sportsmen, they often talk about being in the zone. And that's what I think that zone is. It's almost, you probably wouldn't be able to even count it. It wouldn't be quantifiable, but 0.00 of a second. But if that gives you the bit of an edge of thought, that clarity of thought, surely that's got to be a good thing.
Absolutely. I totally agree 100%. It's a carnivore calm. And if you can compare it to other times in your life when similar events happened in your life, similar stressful type events, it's such a contrast in how you react. You naturally just react in a very calm manner. And it's hard to explain to people. And that's the fatty acids, the ketones. It's, the glucose I always talk about on my channel, how we have a roller coaster of emotions and a roller coaster of energy because of insulin and glucose it's just up and down and waves of energy, and then people who are the coffee and the sleep, but when you eliminate the carbs and you become fat adapted, keto adapted, it's exactly as you described. And then when you start educating yourself, start watching YouTube videos, reading books, start gathering the knowledge little by little and applying pieces to your life, you cannot go back. How can I possibly go back and do what I did before, knowing that it's not appropriate, that it's what it's doing to my body? I know what all those carbs and seed oils, what those things did to me. And so when presented those again, around the holidays here in the United States and there as well, the temptation, it's so easy to say, no, thank you. I don't want that. I know what it did to me. I know what it does to me. It's easier to make decisions and be confident in your decisions.
It is. And as you say, those holiday times can be difficult with family, and they'll say, oh, you're so picky and you're so fussy about your food. I said, no, right. I'm not. Actually, I am the easiest one to feed, to provide for. In fact, if you don't mind, I'll bring my own steak and I'll cook it on the gas barbecue that I got in the back of my car. It's so easy. And they'll say, oh, well, I don't want me to feed you. I said, well, then don't feed me. I don't need to eat. I'll be fine until tomorrow. There's no need.
I had that conversation with somebody just the other day. If we invite you over, what are we going? What do you eat? They got all stressed out about it. I said, relax. I'll find whatever I can find, kind of meat or cheese there. And if not, I'm going to bring some wonderful stuff for you to try. And that's what I always eat when we go to a party. We bring the food with us. We bring the slices. I pre-cooked meat, and it's just amazing.
So this way of eating provides so much freedom. Your freedom is fabulous. It releases you're not thinking about food all the time. If I've fasted for 24 hours and I've competed or trained, don't get me wrong, I am hungry, but I'm hungry like a dog would be or an animal would be. And if I had to go another 12 hours, I would go another 12 hours. If the food's been cooked and the smell of the meat in the back is there, yes, of course, you're drooling and you're ready to eat it, and then you taste it. And the taste is phenomenal because you are ready for that. And you're eating it with beautiful butter or the salt, and you can have salts from all around the world, the best quality salts, and that will enhance the flavor. And what a beautiful time. Now, this is back to Anna when I mentioned her about how the transformation, and I've seen the transformation on her, massively so. All the facial features, she said all her life she couldn't ever put muscle on. I said, oh, you just watch this space, you'll start to build the muscle. The next thing she's putting the muscle on, I can't believe it. But the main one that she was concerned about was the spiritual side, the side of eating an animal. She said she was always told that she would take on the anger of that animal's death. And that's what she was led to believe. And that's what concerned her. So she was willing to eat the meat, but it was the idea of that. And I smiled and I said, you're going to wake up and find something very different to what you believe. It's not that stereotypical man that eats those burgers and drinks a beer and goes out fighting on a Friday night or something like that. You've got the wrong idea of this. Actually, I believe we're calmer on ketones, so much calmer that I won't even notice if there's somebody's having a particular, trying to have a fight with me or whatever, trying to press the buttons. It's because there's no need to. And she's found this. Now what happens, and it's a poor daughter cringes when she watches us eating, the pair of us, because we might be sharing a beautiful steak and no words are needed. We'll be looking at each other, but eating this steak. And what I've said to Anna as well is, when she consumes this one meat, say we go and buy it from the local farm shop, and it's the farmer is really proud of the way he's reared his cattle. And then the butcher's really proud of how he's butchered it, and the supply, and they're award winning. And you can see which field they've come from. Then you're eating it and you're cooking it perfectly, and you're eating nose to tail. You're not wasting, you're eating every part of that. Then you can give praise and gratitude to that animal more than you could do with your avocados from Israel or your almond milk from California or whatever it's coming from halfway around the world. And she's realized that that's very true. And that is complete flip of how she thought before. I mean, this is without going into the idea of the farming. I mean, my grandparents are farmers, and the harvest used to be a blood fest. I mean, that last acre in the field from that harvest you would see blood from the mice to rabbits to small deer, because there's no prisoners taken. That's before you start to look at the pesticides on the insects and everything else that's related to it. Now, I've been shot down before from my colleagues and said, you should stop eating beef because you're decimating the Amazon rainforest. I said, my local farmer doesn't even know where the Amazon rainforest is, so he will not know why his stock is decimating the Amazon rainforest. Right. Oh, well, it's the feed that he needs to feed it. No, it's grass-fed. There's not even wheat finish in it. So there's this strange argument there. So back to what I was saying about the insects and the small rabbits that they'll want to turn a blind eye to. Well, surely if you start to count numbers, there's far more killed, there's far more deaths. And if you want to go down the spiritual route, which I'm all for, and I'm not going to knock anybody's spiritual beliefs, but if you're going to say about that, actually, who's got the right to compare one life to another life? Is that sheep? Is that life more valuable than the 1,000 insects or the 500 field mice? You see what I'm saying? It's at least and when Anna's found this for herself, she can actually give gratitude and thanks and praise to that one animal that she's consuming. Isn't that our ancestral eating? Didn't they all do that? North American
and back then, they actually, they gave it a wonderful life, and it was protected. And then when it was its time, then it was taken out responsibly. I mean, they're going to die anyway, right?
Yes.
And we can't have all the animals living. It will be overpopulated. So there's a lot of arguments that explain why this way of eating is proper and right for the human species.
I mean, some of the most beautiful meat is lamb. Lamb has got the right balance of fat. Yeah, lamb is the most delicious, and we're very, very lucky here in the UK, especially up here in the north. The most beautiful lamb. I mean, Georgia Georgia might be able to tap into salt marsh lamb from the Gower Peninsula, won't you, down there? But up here, ours is all from the grass-fed lamb. My grandfather was a sheep farmer, so I helped with that. Now, these sheep up here in the Yorkshire Dales would be on the steepest hills that you cannot farm. There's nothing else you can put onto that, and they're just living on the grass alone. Right. So that's a pretty good way. Then they would have the wool. I mean, very few people wear wool now, but I mean, it's a beautiful natural product. So you would gain the wool from that and then the meat from it. To me, that's not a bad way of eating. If I was going to design, and please don't anybody pull me up here on the spiritual side, the religious side, but if you're going to design an animal for the most perfect food source, you've got it there. Something that can live on the grass on a hillside that nothing else can. That's a docile animal that will want, and also provide you with wolf. Anyway, I shouldn't really say much about that, but it's a beautiful food and it contains everything that we need.
It really is. And it's also, I forget what people refer to it as. It's like the fish, the land fish, because of the high omega-3s, very high, healthy omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, better than any, even grass-fed beef. It's better than that, the lamb. And I love the taste of lamb fat. What about you, George?
Yeah, if I can just jump in there on lamb, Richard Smith, Keto Pro, who's very well known in the UK, he reckons that it's about 10 times the omega-3 in lamb than steak. Interesting enough, I had 4 lamb chops as my Sunday lunch this afternoon. Very fatty from the local market. But I just need to also do a bit of housekeeping here as well, because we got some more people joining us. And a couple of people I missed the first time. Hi, Coach Angela. Hi, Donna Ray. Hi, Rick, the Duckman, the Charger Mopar. Jonathan, Carnivore Muscle, is very kindly joining us as well. Sharon is here. So is Joe Sleeps, who's been on this podcast before. Jonathan, by the way, is coming on next week. And we also have the Strong Carnivoress, Louise, who has joined us, who Duncan knows very well because he was fortunate enough to sit next to her. And in between, Duncan was in between myself and Louise at the last meetup. So he had somebody attractive to look to on one side anyway. So there we go. And also I've noticed we got a very interesting new guest called Sandwich Videos from New Hampshire, who looks like he's a very good carnivore because he's smokes outside, smokes all his own brisket outside and that sort of thing. So it'd be very interesting to meet you again, Sandwich Videos. Plus the fact that you're from New Hampshire. Now I don't know if anybody, I think a lot of you here are aware of my carnivore bingo game. And I was missing the state of New Hampshire. I didn't know any carnivores in New Hampshire. So thank you, Sandwich Videos. You've allowed me to fill in New Hampshire on my bingo card, which is nice. Quick word about Steph. Steph is not here, as you probably noticed. That's because she is just returned from Spain. I think she's actually on the road back to her house in Wales. She was at Phil Escott's carnivore retreat in Spain with the likes of Coach Stephen Thomas and Lee Escott. So she has a note from the headmaster for not being here today because she had a very good excuse. Reference lamb. Steph lives in southern Wales, very near the Gower Peninsula. So she is able to locally get hold of the salt marsh lamb that Duncan was talking about. I'm a bit further over, but it is available here. And again, talking about the excessive animals, we have a massive deer problem here in the UK. We have far too many. We are not allowed to manage them as we used to with hounds and rifles. So they are running rampant. And I actually lost a car last May to a deer. It caused about £2,000 worth of, no, it was a write-off. But try to claim off an insurance company for hitting a deer and it's your fault. So I took the £2,000 hit rather than try and mess around and actually went and bought a new car. But we are losing many vehicles on the road to deer strikes, and there is all this wonderful venison running around the countryside that the government decide that they are far too pretty and far too Bambi-like for us to actually go and harvest them properly. So yeah, that's it. So that brings me up to date, I think, on everything I had to say. So back to you, John, and we'll take it from there.
All right. We have I'm logged in as Stephanie, if you guys are wondering why she's popping up, even though you said she's not here. I'm logged in as her, and I'm highlighting here somebody, Carnivore Muscle,
Jonathan.
Squid, Jonathan, 2 pounds there. I don't know what he's doing there, but thank you, Jonathan. Really appreciate that.
That's the same principle as buy me a coffee, John, basically. So okay. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
And there's Rick. Rick, I knew Rick was going to chime in as soon as you talked about hitting the deer with your car, George. Because Rick he opens his hood in his truck or his van, and he cooks the food right on the engine. He explains in his videos how to do it. He secures it on the hot. It's amazing. He told me all about it at Hack Your Health. Yeah, and you were talking about eating off the back of your vehicle, right? But Rick does it on the engine itself. He uses the heat of the engine, which is just fascinating. He has some amazing stories. So, yeah, pretty cool there. Let's see what else if anybody has a question, And you type a QQQ.
I'll tell you what, John. I've got a question. I'm going to present a scenario to Duncan and see how he deals with it.
Good.
He's a retired teacher, so imagine that I'm the principal, the head teacher at your school. And as we all know, the most important meal of the day is breakfast, and many children don't get breakfast at home. So there's a lot of breakfast clubs springing up in the UK. So I'm the principal, and I decide I'm going to start a breakfast club. I get sponsored by a cereal company, not Kellogg's, but one of the lesser ones who are trying to push their products by being very generous. So we get it. The kids don't want it because it's not branded, it's not Kellogg's, it's not Frosties, it's not anything like that. So, and they're refusing to eat it. So as your principal, I tell you that the only way we're going to get them to eat it is by adding sugar to it, because we know that kids will eat sugar no matter what. And Mag, that's obviously a totally fictitious scenario, which you've never had to deal with. How would you deal with it? How would you deal with it?
I am happy to tell you I have had to deal with this, and I'm not worried in the slightest. And I really hope that my former head teacher is now listening to this. But I can guarantee she won't be. She will be there making cakes in her retirement and feeding them to children. I was the assistant head in the pupil referral unit for several years, and the head teacher came in bouncing to say that she'd got this sponsor from the Magic Breakfast Club. And I can say the Magic Breakfast Club, there's nothing wrong with saying about them, and the great idea what they're doing behind there. But it was all cereals for free for children in schools to give them their breakfast so they don't go hungry into school. Now, okay, not a bad thing. These cereals are fortified. They are heart healthy. Or the three of us will know that perhaps that's not the best thing that they're doing there. The students in my school, although they were hungry, said, "What's this rubbish, sir? We're not eating this muck," because they wanted the branded cereals. They didn't want these. To them, it was, I don't know, they said it tasted like cardboard. So my head teacher said to me, "Mr. Smart, you're not encouraging these students to eat them." I said, "What do you want me to do?" She says, "Suggest that they put sugar on them." And I said, "Sugar? Seriously?" She goes, "Yes." I said, for one, you already given them a sugar cereal that with low-fat milk, skim milk here in the UK, because she was so anti-fat. So that's not great for a start. And then you're going to ask them to put sugar onto it. Yes, encourage them to have the sugar. Why? Why are we trying to do it? Because they must eat. If I had this conversation recently, and I thought, if I could go back in time, I would have been even braver than I was. But at that time, you have mortgages. I had the 3 children. They're going through university, all these things. And really, there's no way now. We all know in hindsight that she couldn't have sacked me. I mean, that would have been a beautiful case of trying to take me to tribunal, or me going to tribunal over that. But you still fear it a little bit. But I was still annoyed with this. So I went into the canteen and I said, "Children, here's your breakfast cereal. Here's your bowls of white poison. And here are more white poison that you can put on top of your white poison." None of us, "So I'm not eating any of that white poison." I said, "Well, that's your choice, not mine. But I am encouraging you to eat this white poison." Well, I didn't work there much longer and got another job. And I think that was really where I wanted to leave as well and go. But this is a true story. And there was witnesses to this fact. Now that goes on in school. And the reason is because they're saying that these students they want to be eating at home. So they need to eat this. A lot of the ones in this, for anybody listening, a pupil referral unit, the students have got possibly behavioral issues. There may be neurodiverse issues that are causing the behavior or so-called behavior, and they'll be bouncing off walls. So they can't be taught in a mainstream school, and then they're taught in this other school, which is a special school. Now, the students that go in there, yeah, they may have issues. They may have issues with alcoholism, with the parents, or the drugs, and they've got other baggage, they may want to call it, that they're bringing into it. But by giving them this sugar, they would be bouncing off the walls, literally bouncing off the walls. So then they would be restrained by the ex-forces men that were employed to restrain them. And this vicious circle went on and on. Then the police are involved and there's a criminal charge against the student. Really, I could see it on my ketones so clearly, so slowly, that if we gave them something substantial, something that would satisfy them, their levels would be so much down. There wouldn't be the bouncing off the wall. So as I went to a different school, and for the GCSEs, we started encouraged to have some of the heads might introduce bacon sandwiches or bagel before their exams in the morning. Make sure they have that. So I'm saying to the students, just take the bacon out and eat the bacon. Throw the rest of it away. It's your choice, but you will do much better on that. Now, it's a controversial subject here. And the last year in my education, as I'm trying to downscale to working to retiring, I started to go part-time a little bit and do one-to-one small group work tuition. And I have always diverse towards the neurodiversity. I don't know if it's just the way I am. I probably would have been diagnosed years ago if there was this so-called diagnosis, although I'm not into putting these students into categories and saying they've got ADHD or they've autism. Sometimes there's no need to. But what I did find was it's the food that's causing them the issues. I wouldn't be allowed to ask this, but I could do and say, oh, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Oh, I had my Lucky Charms with sugar. And okay. And next day I'll be saying, hey, you're in a good mood today. I was thinking, oh, I didn't eat anything this morning. Now, we all know that breakfast can be, if it's eaten, the worst meal of the day. They're breaking their fast, iftar, on a high sugar carbohydrate fuel source. By lunchtime, they're dipping. By the afternoon, they're rocking. Cannot focus. Then they feel hungry, but they don't know they're hungry. They don't really know. And especially, can you imagine at that age when all the hormones of puberty, the confusion that's coming in, then they get a teacher turning around and poking the finger in the face saying, you didn't do your homework. Well, a 16-year-old lad is going to say, I'll snap your finger off, sir. Well, you're out of here. You're expelled. You're permanently excluded now over something that could have been avoided. And it upset me. So when the students are saying, so I haven't eaten anything, I said, good, I haven't either. What do you mean you haven't? I said, I haven't eaten since yesterday and I'll be good until tonight, but you'll be fine on this. And that's what I try to encourage them. But I for obvious reasons, I could never in the school promote my way of eating or turning around and saying, don't follow the healthy plate or the food pyramid and tip it up upside down. It's a bit like trying to state your political views in education because we're influential. They've got to make the decision themselves. And it's just been a little bit respectful. But when I've been told by a head teacher what I should be trying to promote, again, that shouldn't happen, should it really?
Yeah, you are 100% speaking from my background as a middle school. I taught middle school for 34 years, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. These were 11 to 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and the cafeteria, horrible foods. I would have duty and walk through and see the confection sugar coated, deep fried in peanut oil French toast sticks, and the gummy whatever vitamins and the skim milk. And then the kids in their backpack they'd bring their own candy, bags of candy after Halloween, after Christmas, after Easter, just lots of candy. And then they come into the classroom, right? And they're all over the place,
Yes.
all over the place. And it's insane. And it's very difficult. And I hear the arguments that we need to feed the children because a lot of them aren't being fed at home. But like you said, people aren't understanding the physiology of the human body. Now, one topic that we don't have enough time to talk about is, to become fat adapted, for someone to switch over from glucose to ketones, it doesn't happen overnight. So to just stop it, they're going to have these sugar lows. They're going to have, withdrawal symptoms. They're going to have issues, just like when an adult switches over to eating the proper diet. So we can't just take it all away from them. But what I like to do is when the kids asked me, I would always turn it around to me and say, well, this is what I eat and I choose to do this. And I'm not teaching them how to eat. I'm not telling them they're doing it wrong. I would just say, well, I don't eat that anymore. Oh, I don't eat bread. No, I don't. You don't? You don't have rice? No. Wow. Then they want to know why, but I always make sure I'm talking about me so that if the parents got mad, if the administrators, that you call them the head teachers, got mad, the headmaster, I would say I'm just talking about myself. I'm not explaining, not teaching curriculum here, but there is a fine line there for liability reasons. And
Yes,
you know,
yes.
we know about parents. We're at 1:55 here. We have about 5 minutes to go. George,
Yeah.
did you want to
I
share
do
anything?
have something which is I do have something which is going to be 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
Firstly, next Monday, December the 8th, you will find Duncan, myself, Stephanie, Coach Stephen, Lee, Copus Carnivore, Kent Carnivore, Carl Day, the Primal Lifestyle. We are all at a meetup in Kent in England.
I wish I was there.
They're wheeling out the, shall we say, the big guns, or at least the Coach Stephen and Lee Copus anyway. They will be speaking. We're being filmed by mainstream television because either they want to give us a sympathetic viewing or they want to shoot us down in flames. We're not quite sure which yet, but that's interesting. So that's the next time that I will see Duncan and Steph. However, Duncan, we will have something to talk about, which I didn't know. What reminded me is the fact that you use the Arabic word iftah for breaking your fast, which is the evening breaking of the fast during the holy month of Ramadan for our Muslim brothers and sisters. The morning breakfast is actually called fatur in Arabic.
Thank you, George.
I'm not sure
okay.
if you know,
No.
but I speak Arabic, and I'm an old Arab hand, Middle East specialist from the Army Intelligence School. One thing I didn't know about you is the fact that you and I have shared some sand in the past because you climbed the pyramids at the Giza Plateau, I believe.
I have done, yes.
I'm an old Egyptian hand. I was there during the revolution in 2011, and I studied at Alexandria University after I left the army. So just to let you know that, yeah, we will have quite a lot to talk about when we meet up on December the 8th. It's far too late for you to tell us now about your exploits in Egypt, but there will be plenty of other opportunities hopefully down the line for you to tell those stories as well.
Excellent.
But so expect me to and Lainey was with me, by the way, who will be with us at the meetup, and she was with us during the revolution of 2011 as well. So she's an old Egyptian hand. So that's great. Anyway, so yeah, we've got like 4 minutes to go. So John, back to you.
All right. Wow. So much more. I wish we could be on for another hour. We have a lot more to talk about, but we usually end at around 2 o'clock. So we're going to go around real quick and explain who we are and where we can find you and connect with you and your work. I'll start and we'll end with you, Duncan. Again, I'm Carnivore Teacher. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram and all the other social media sites. I put a lesson out every day, 5 to 7 minutes, sometimes a little longer, a little shorter. As a teacher, teaching a topic, something that I had an aha moment about, and I want to pass it on, and I make a lesson and I pass it on with my video. So that's me, George.
Yeah, my name's George. I use my YouTube channel, which is good enough for you, to make announcements about what's coming up and little news things. I don't tend to do a lot of it. I've done one, which is Dr. Kilt's. So it's more a functional channel. I do one take wonders, and that's about it really. When I've got a message to put out, I also put the same message out on Facebook, not in any other form of media. One thing I just did touch on there, I am a English teacher. I'm qualified to teach English as a second to speakers of other languages. So I'm in the adult education sphere. And I'm also a qualified linguist in both French and Arabic. And the bit of history which I was just talking about, I'm a full member of the Intelligence School, the British Army Intelligence School, where I was a Middle East specialist. So I spent many years in the Middle East, which is how I know Arabic. And also I studied Islam at Exeter University as well. So that's one little thing which not everybody knows about me, but other than the fact that I'm very much in the carnivore world now. So there we go. So that gives me and Duncan clearly quite a lot to talk about because I've been inside the pyramids. He's climbed them from the outside, so that's going to give us a bit of a conversation. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes to go, and let's hand it to Duncan to convince us of where we can find him and
tell us about your book.
Also
about
the book. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Or should I say, shukran gazeelan. So
very Egyptian, yeah.
So you'll find me on social media under Duncan Smart, Instagram Dunk Smart, on TikTok. I'm doing quite a bit on TikTok, an awful lot, and under the Carnivore Guide, but also Duncan Smart, and on Facebook. It's my own personal account, but please follow because I've turned it over to promoting more the Carnivore way under Duncan Smart again. My book, guys, it's obviously on Amazon, a lot of other sources out there. You can pick up the Blood and Bone, but I would suggest just focusing on that. It's much cheaper because it's a lot smaller to print. It's an easier book. It's more compact. Carnivore the Manual, and it's also ebook, hardback. There's an hardback edition, and every chapter is a standalone chapter, but read it from front to back. You will see plenty between the lines, and you'll see me in there by the end of it. Then you go back to each chapter. As I said, the standalone. Anybody who's interested in the carnivore way, particular thing, there will be a chapter in there for them. So.
Yeah, just a quick word about Facebook, because both Duncan and myself and you, John, we're all in the same space on Facebook. And I don't know if you noticed, but the other day, one of our great friends from Canada, Sweets Redding, listened to Duncan and said, "Oh, I think that sounds a bit like George." As you can probably tell, he's got a good old northern accent. I am very much a southern English accent. So yeah, we're slightly different. But Sweets, I can assure you, it was Duncan, not me.
But George, we both have the same carnivore voice. All three of us got the same carnivore voice, haven't we, sir?
Yes, we do.
So.
All right, folks.
That's it.
That's it.
Just hang on a second afterwards, Duncan. We have an after show party in which we break out the wine and the beer and the potato chips and the
I like your school, guys. Your school's much better than I worked in.
All right, folks. Join us next Sunday for Carnivore Sunday School. We have a new guest every week. Hope to see you then. Thanks for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.